Section 22, Compliance Case Study, Real Estate Transaction Dispute. Understanding compliance risks in real estate transactions. Throughout this course, we have explored the formation of contracts, the reasons contracts may be discharged, and the remedies available when breaches occur. In addition to contractual issues between buyers and sellers, real estate transactions can also involve regulatory compliance concerns that affect licensees and brokerages. When disputes arise in a real estate transaction, the issue may extend beyond the contractual relationship between the parties and may involve the Arizona Department of Real Estate, ADRA, if the conduct of a licensee is questioned. Complaints submitted to ADRA may trigger investigations into whether a licensee followed professional conduct rules, properly documented the transaction, and complied with broker supervision requirements. Understanding how regulatory authorities evaluate disputes helps licensees recognize the importance of compliance, documentation, and professional conduct throughout the transaction process. Breakdown of a real contract dispute. Consider the following scenario. A buyer enters into a residential purchase contract for a property and deposits earnest money with the escrow agent. During the inspection period, the buyer identifies several issues with the property and requests repairs from the seller. The seller refuses to complete the repairs, and the buyer decides to cancel the contract. The buyer believes the cancellation was permitted under the inspection contingency, while the seller argues that the buyer did not provide the required written notice within the timeframe specified in the contract. Because of the disagreement, the parties dispute who is entitled to the earnest money deposit. The buyer then files a complaint with the Arizona Department of Real Estate, claiming that the agent failed to properly explain the inspection period deadlines and did not document the cancellation notice correctly. Situations like this demonstrate how contractual disputes may evolve into regulatory investigations when licensee conduct becomes part of the complaint. Broker supervision responsibilities. Arizona law places significant responsibility on designated brokers to supervise the real estate activities conducted by licensees within their brokerage. These supervision requirements are outlined in AAC R4-28-1103, which requires brokers to establish written policies and procedures for monitoring the activities of their agents. Broker supervision includes reviewing transaction files, verifying that contracts and disclosures are properly completed, and ensuring that licensees follow the brokerage's compliance procedures. When disputes occur, regulators often examine whether the broker exercised appropriate oversight of the transaction. For example, if a licensee failed to document the buyer's cancellation notice properly, investigators may examine the brokerage's transaction file to determine whether the designated broker reviewed the documentation and ensured that proper procedures were followed. Effective supervision helps prevent errors that could lead to disputes and regulatory complaints. ADRA enforcement considerations. When a complaint is filed with the Arizona Department of Real Estate, the agency may initiate an investigation to determine whether a licensee violated state statutes or administrative rules. ADRA has the authority to investigate allegations of misconduct and impose disciplinary action when violations occur. One of the primary statutes governing licensee conduct is ARS, paragraph 32-2153, which identifies actions that may result in disciplinary action against a real estate licensee. These actions may include misrepresentation, failure to disclose material information, improper handling of client funds, or failure to comply with real estate laws and regulations. If investigators determine that a licensee violated professional conduct standards, ADRA may impose disciplinary penalties such as license suspension, license revocation, civil fines, or mandatory education requirements. Because of these potential consequences, licensees must approach every transaction with careful attention to documentation, communication, and compliance with professional standards. Lessons for licensees. Real estate disputes provide valuable lessons for licensees regarding how to prevent problems before they occur. One of the most important lessons involves careful documentation of every stage of the transaction. Written records provide evidence of the actions taken by the parties and demonstrate whether the licensee fulfilled their professional responsibilities. Another important lesson involves clear communication with clients regarding deadlines and contractual rights. Many disputes arise because buyers or sellers misunderstand their obligations under the contract. By clearly explaining the terms of the agreement and documenting important communications, licensees can reduce the likelihood of misunderstandings. Finally, licensees should always follow brokerage policies and procedures related to transaction management. Broker supervision systems exist to protect both consumers and licensees by ensuring that transactions are conducted according to professional standards. Online discussion. 1. Question: why might a contractual dispute between a buyer and seller lead to a regulatory investigation by the Arizona Department of Real Estate? Answer: if a complaint alleges that a licensee failed to follow professional conduct rules or properly manage the transaction, ADRE may investigate whether the licensee violated state statutes or administrative rules governing real estate practice. 2. Question: why is proper documentation important when a transaction dispute occurs? Answer: documentation provides evidence of what actions were taken during the transaction and whether the parties complied with the contract terms. These records can help resolve disputes and demonstrate compliance with regulatory requirements. 3. Question: what role does broker supervision play in preventing compliance violations? Answer: broker supervision ensures that licensees follow brokerage policies, complete transaction documents correctly, and comply with real estate laws. Proper oversight helps identify problems early and prevents compliance violations.